Hello and welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions, episode 68. I'm Michelle Hawk and I'm here with my shaman sister, Katherine Bird. This podcast came out of our friendship, our conversations, and our investigations of what it means to be a human right now on the planet, what it means to do this work in the world, and how we can serve more, love more, and show up in ever-expanding spirals of our own infinite consciousness. No big deal. And it's a different intro every single time. That's just how it's got to be. Today we are speaking about the nature of healing, and really specifically kind of looking at a couple of these questions around how does healing work. I think I've been asked this before, and some of this are based on questions that we've actually been asked. How does healing work? Can we ever fully heal? Is that a thing? What does healing even mean? And how do we work with this concept? We're healers, we're mentors. I know a lot of you tuning into this podcast identify as healers. So we're going to dive into that a little bit. We're going to unpack that and see what is the nature of healing. So thank you for joining us for this conversation today. Kat, how are you doing?
I'm amazing. So good. And just jumped off a mastermind call with a group that's not mine, but guesting on a mastermind call. And really, we were talking a lot about the nature of healing. It wasn't my plan to talk about that, but it ended up being a part of that call. So I'm super excited to be talking about this. It's such a huge thing. It's like so big. So I think it'll be interesting to see how much of this we can dive into in this hour.
Absolutely. It is quite a topic. So since you just came fresh off of this conversation, you want to just give us the down? No, I'm just kidding. But let's sort of think about, I think it's helpful to define what we're not talking about to begin with. So healing, if you look up healing in the dictionary, which I did at one point years ago when I started teaching Reiki classes, I was like, what is that actually, how do they talk about healing? And it means to cure, to make right, or to rid of disease or rid of ailment is sort of the very clinical definition of healing. And that is pretty much 0% what we're talking about through the course of this conversation. Throw away the dictionary definition. It's not helpful for the course of this conversation.
Well, and that's all. It's all rolled in there into one, and we can't deny that that's our concept of healing. That's our concept of what healing is. And I think in the same regard of what are we not talking about, we have to be conscious and aware that for most of us have grown up in a industrialized, westernized society that's our experience of healing for most of our life is going to the doctor, and you have a problem, something's wrong, you're sick, you go to the doctor, they look at you, they run some tests on your blood, you pee in a cup, they give you some pills or a shot, and you go home, and that's that. And either you get better or you get worse and you go back to the doctor and go through that process over and over again until hopefully you get better or you don't. So that's kind of, our typical experience of what is healing for our Western society, I think. Mm-hmm. And so we all have to, I think, acknowledge that that's generally where we're at. Mm-hmm. When we start this kind of deeper sort of healing processes that we're going through, we also have to acknowledge our societal structures and limitations on what healing is that we have taken in and taken into ourselves as to how healing occurs, what healing means, what it looks like through the process, and what it means when you're done. So we all have that, we have those ingrained belief systems as to what healing is, which can, help us and hinder us when we're going through these processes.
Yes. And I want to point out a couple of the fundamental pieces around what you described, which again, unfortunately, is a very typical experience of how are we conditioned to experience healing in our modern Western world, going to see somebody else to be under their care. So it's a passive act. We're not, involved in that process. We didn't, we're not writing the prescription. We're not giving ourselves the shot. We're not involved really in any way. We're just sort of sitting there being poked and prodded. So number one, that paradigm of healing is a very passive one for the recipient. It is a very much a receiving. And number two, it is focused on a very specific, predetermined, result-oriented outcome that is based on getting rid of a problem. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of the two fundamental pieces of what it means to go in this conditioned route of healing. Is like, we're not actually involved in the healing process. We're just totally at the mercy of whoever the physician is, and it's based on fixing something wrong. And right. Both of those are, pretty much opposite of what we're talking about here. And in terms of like active involvement and not destination based, but harmony based.
Yeah, I love that. It's, because we have a symptom. So let me fix that symptom, is the paradigm that we've been in. I have this thing that I'm experiencing. How can I fix that specific thing? Sometimes at the detriment of the entirety of the rest of the system. Like, okay, well, let's fix this symptom, but not having dealt with the underlying reasons, both physical, emotional, environmental, spiritual, everything else, that are going into this symptom having its place, saying, hey, look at me, there's something wrong here. Mm-hmm. So we are talking about going into those deeper layers and levels and this more holistic experience of beyond just the symptom that I'm having. Of course, if we're having a symptom, we're having pain, we're extremely sad, we're suffering in some sort of way, we're realizing that our life is not as we would love it to be. We can see that as a symptom that we would like to change and shift. And we're looking at a more holistic approach to solving not only that symptom, but the underlying reasons that symptom is coming to the surface.
Mm-hmm. Another way of saying this is the problem is never the problem. So the problem, the result that we're seeing, whatever symptom manifestation on the physical level, isn't, like, I would say 99% of the time is not where that problem originated, unless it's an acute injury sort of thing. Like, okay, then, maybe it's like if you stepped on a nail or something, like that's a problem. Okay, yes, let's work on that.
Pull the nail out.
Pull the nail out and treat that. But in terms of, how disease manifests in the body, or in terms of, even other injuries that are related to postural misalignment or related to energy, that we're holding in the body and creating muscle binding, or all sorts of other things, usually, and very fortunately, more and more modalities are coming to be more prominent in popular consciousness that understand that the symptoms are just indicators. And yes, obviously we want to work to alleviate that, but it's really not going to happen through, okay, I'm going to give you a thing to get rid of the symptom. Again, that's not actually moving in a direction of healing. That is placating, right? That is ameliorating the symptom and getting rid of the indicator, but doing nothing to actually work with the body to come into harmonious alignment. Really, I think if I want to, insert a bullet point here, healing, works toward, like, arrow pointing toward harmonious alignment right there.
Right. And is not the kind of Band-Aid scenario that we see where, a lot of times people will have an issue and go to the doctor and they get a medicine or shot or whatever. And maybe they have high blood pressure. Well, you can go to the doctor and get a high blood pressure pill, and you can take that every single day for the rest of your life. And it may or may not help with your blood pressure. You might have to increase or whatever. But there is also the choice to start looking at life. Like, why is there high blood pressure? What is the reason behind it? Why is that hypertension there inside the body, inside the system? And what are the approaches to life that can start to shift and change that on a deeper level, which are also going to give access to other things, finding out about other things and unwinding other things. Oh, I'm super stressed because, okay, my blood pressure is really high. I feel a lot of anxiety. I feel a lot of stress. Oh, I don't feel safe in my relationship. Oh, I really don't like my job. All of these things, when I could take a pill and go, all right, I no longer have high blood pressure, but I still don't feel safe in my relationship and I don't like my job, but I'm just not going to not do anything about that because my symptom has been taken care of.
Mm-hmm. So then at that point, usually, when, again, very unfortunately, we have a medical system that is designed to keep people dependent on the system itself, and looking, that's a different podcast episode right there.
Totally.
What's up about the medical system? And, this is one of those pieces, but really looking at, health and healing as a continuing process of coming back into alignment in the body, and not only in the body, but looking at how these other spheres of our lives are really directly related and expressed through the body. We can look at, pretty much any physical symptom. I received this in some of especially the sound healing training that I was doing a while ago. Any physical experience that we're having, so disease or a misalignment in the physical body, look back 6 to 9 months beforehand at what was going on in that time frame. And quite often there's a pretty direct correlation of like, oh, you start expressing, arrhythmia, or, someone starts having symptoms of congestive heart failure or something. And then you look 6 to 9 months ago, well, their spouse passed away, for example, or breast cancer. That's another common one of breast cancer. Well, 6 to 9 months ago, they went through a divorce, right? And so then there's this correlation of that's kind of how long it takes when we have our energy bodies. We have something enter the energy field, and it takes about 6 to 9 months before it lands and manifests in the physical body. So,
and it can take a lot longer before we actually see symptoms. Yeah. So for a lot of people who end up with cancer, and there's been a lot of research and studies in medical mediums and in the Taoist training medical Qigong training that I'm doing, the man who wrote all of the textbooks, his specialty was oncology. And this reality that cancers that we have, like, all humans have cancers. Like, we have cancers, our bodies deal with the fact that cancers, cells do crazy things, and our body brings us back to alignment and harmony. And dog butt in the face there with Michelle. And, but that when we have a holding within our energy field, within our emotional body, usually our emotional body is the thing that starts resonating with this frequency. And then that sort of holds within the field and slowly comes in closer and closer. So there are times when we might not recognize that the thing that is, causing us to get sick is from our past and has been held in our system for a long time. And it takes a while for it to get all the way through the fields, all the way to the body, all the way inside the body, and then start to derange the cellular structure or derange the physical structure. The physical body is the manifestation of what's going on in these different realms and these different energy fields. And it can be really fast for some people. It can be more slow for some people. But there's usually a root in there that has to do with some sort of emotional something that's going on that causes trauma, pain, something that's being held within the system and not forgiven. Something that's there in some kind of way that's coming into the body. And we can often see this with people who have, and it can even be inherited. So you might be like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like I have whatever, but I've also worked with people who have inherited their family trauma and has shown up in their bodies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it's inherent whenever we speak about healing, we do need to speak about, well, how do we get to the place where we need healing? So yes, we are spending some time talking about dis-ease and disharmony in the body, because quite often in the body, and I should also say in the energy field, because that's what really prompts people to step on this path. Nobody usually seeks out healing until they need it. And then it becomes an awareness, and hopefully, ideally, becomes kind of this lifelong practice of health and well-being, so that we can stay in that space in the healthy spectrum. So, but again, usually we don't start there. Usually we get there because we need it.
Yeah. So I think that there's one piece in here that is very important for us always to remember, is that if there are symptoms, if there's stuff that's coming up and there's this realization of a need for healing, that there's no shame in that, you haven't done anything wrong. You're not like failing as a human being because there's something coming up for you that is calling for you to pay attention. And that's what these things are, things that are happening in our bodies. They're this, hey, pay attention. There's something not in harmony. There's something that needs attention. Hey, look at me. And there's absolutely no shame in that process. There's no shame in the process of healing, no matter what it is that you're going through, from the most intense, very sick sort of experience that you might be having to whatever is going on in your personal life, your relationships, your emotions, all of these pieces, I think is always important for us to remember, no matter what it is that you're here healing from and with, that there's no shame in that process. There's no shame in the healing process.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And when we offer ourselves that permission, I think, to really be radically present with, well, why is this coming up? What do I need to learn? And treat it as an invitation, treat it with curiosity, so that instead of, beating ourselves up or putting ourselves down, or like, oh, I should have known better, or whatever we tell ourselves, just treating it as like, okay, well, this is coming up as a learning experience for me, so that I can move through it, so that I can have this, this experience, and just treat it like that, treat it like a learning experience. I want to also touch upon and emphasize the importance of not being the recipient of healing, but the co-creator and the participant in healing. Again, this is a very different, looking from sort of the go to the doctor, get the pill version, where you are receiving and it's very passive. If you are working with, I know not all healers work this way. I work this way. Kat, I know you work this way too. It is a very active process. You are very actively involved in your own healing work, and you are a participant. There's not a darn thing that I'm doing for you, except for creating the container for you to do the work. And I think that's a really big distinction between what we're talking about in the nature of healing today and what we have been conditioned to learn in our environment.
Yeah. And this can be really a sticking point and a trouble for people. And I know that I've talked to a lot of people, and you can, or, sometimes I know, Michelle, like you'll get messages from people and they are in this state of panic because they've given up so much of their own agency in this process that it's like, I need you to heal me. I need you to fix this for me. I need you to do this to me. And you can feel the energy of that when I say it, and that there is is often, and I mean, we all kind of go there a little bit when we're going through our shit and we're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can fix this thing. Like, what the heck? I need someone to fix this for me.
Right. Well, if I put myself in this mess, I obviously don't know what the hell I'm doing. So I need help, right? Okay. But maybe, and also that help isn't going to come in the form of somebody fixing it for you. The help is going to come in the form of you having what you need to address it yourself.
Right. And when we are kind of living in this new paradigm of healing, then we realize and we own our own part in it. We own, oh, I actually have to pay attention to what I'm eating. I have to pay attention to the media that I'm taking in, to the people I spend time with, to what I'm doing at work, to my physical exercise, to if I'm meditating or engaging in something that feels like a spiritual practice to me. All of these things, they're our own personal individual responsibilities. And when we're stuck in this old paradigm of healing, then we have, we've given up our personal responsibility to do what, is going to help us. And I know for me, when I work with people, I am very much about people going through their own process, doing their own visualization and receiving work, doing their own channeling work, getting in touch with themselves, listening to their bodies, and then giving them individualized, specific little practices to do that are going to support the healing process, because the healing doesn't just happen when you're with someone that is a healer or you're in session. And the healing process, if you're working with somebody, shouldn't just be happening while you're working with them. Like, we don't have enough time for that. There's all of this other time in between sessions, and that we have to be looking at how we're doing things and incorporating little things. It's not the giant things, it's the little things that are going to support the healing process in ourselves.
Absolutely. It's the practices and the homework really outside of the sessions. The sessions are heightened experiences. They're moments for feedback. They're moments for teaching. And, so for example, let's think about perhaps a modality where we seem to be a little bit more on the receiving end. So like acupuncture, for example. Like when I go get acupuncture, I'm not putting the needles in myself. It's not that I am holding the container in that way or participating in that way, but I am taking agency in even making the appointment. That's me, like, taking responsibility for my healing. I'm taking agency in, in talking about my nutrition, in getting herbs, in following the recommendations of the acupuncturist, in addressing energy blockages in other areas. So even, again, the session itself is kind of a punctuated highlight. Like, okay, let's check in. Like, let's do, it's like a maintenance, really. It's like okay, let's, go take your car in for a tune-up sort of thing. But then you spend the rest of the time driving, and like, you want to make sure you put gas in it, right? Because if you don't put gas in the car, it's not going to go. It's not the maintenance checks that make the car go. It's the maintenance checks that keep it functioning well, and you still have to do other stuff to it in the meantime, right? We are the same way. Like, we get to spend 95% of our time taking care of our own vehicle, our own personal embodied vehicle.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time, go see an expert.
Yeah, and I think that an important piece here is to empower yourself to ask questions. And like you said, be curious, but be curious. I know that there are a lot of practitioners out there who they kind of just go in, they do their thing, and then they're done, because that's how people engage with them, because they're used to this sort of Western medical experience. But when you start asking questions and saying, okay, acupuncturist, like, what's going on? Like, how would you diagnose me? All right, you would diagnose me as, having this. Great, I'm going to write that down. And what can I be eating to support this? And they'll tell you, what should I not be eating? And they'll tell you, what should I be doing? What other things should I be doing to support this? And they'll tell you. But oftentimes, if you don't ask the questions, for some practitioners, they're not going to overload you with a bunch of information that they don't know if you're going to be interested in or work on or work with at all.
Or feel paralyzed by.
Yeah.
That's the other thing is, you know, for a lot of, and this is from the practitioner perspective, I used to work with people who wanted to come in and be effects. I don't do that anymore. First of all, I only work with people who are really interested in taking agency for their practice. But while I was in that place, I wanted to give a lot of information because I knew it was important. I wanted to empower people. There were people who were ready for that, and there were people who ended up looking at me like a deer in the headlights after I gave them a couple of recommendations, and like they never came back to see me again. So those, again, like those are people for whom the taking agency itself feels a little bit overwhelming. So if this is you, or if you know someone like this, or you're kind of wondering, okay, how do I feel? And granted, honestly, if you're tuning into this podcast, like you're probably pretty spot on with this. Like you probably don't need this recommendation, but maybe you're a practitioner looking at, you know, some of these people that you're working with who are in this passive role. Maybe have a conversation with them about what it means to take agency and fully invest in themselves in their healing process, not only in terms of paying you investment, but investing their own time and energy in understanding and feeling empowered in their relationship with their healing process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is really important. So, all right. I want to, I'm like, oh, I want to make sure that we get everything that we want to say in here. And,
can we jump to, can we heal? Can we ever fully?
Yeah, I think that we had this in the title. So I think we should approach this subject for sure.
This particular question, I don't know about you, Kat, but I've heard from several people and actually fairly recently from someone who contacted me for a consultation, and she was so jazzed to work with me. She was like all lit up. She's like total fuck yes. And then she went and spoke to a couple of people in her life who basically told her their opinions about, you know, is it worth it? Like, you know, it takes you so many it takes one so many lifetimes to heal. Like basically they didn't believe it could be done. They were in the, like, you can't really ever actually heal anything. Like you're always going to carry this karma with you. So what's the point?
That's fucking depressing.
Oh my gosh. So she sends me an email back saying like what these people had told her. And I'm reading this just going like face palm. And then she ends with, but I don't believe that. I believe we can heal, like ... question mark. Like,
can we?
So that's why we're talking about this, because I got that email and I read it to Kat. I was like, oh man, okay.
Yeah.
This is a thing.
It's super a thing. And, you know, a lot of times we do have that, especially when we have the stuff that we're like, oh, gosh, I feel like I've always had this and there's always been this thing. And I know even I'll have those moments when I'm like, maybe I'm just not supposed to clear it in this lifetime. Like, you know, like, woe is me. I'm, this lifetime is just my karmic burden for this wound, you know, and and then that is depressing. It like takes the wind out of your sails. You're like, okay, well, I guess this is just my lot, like so martyrdom, right? It's like my lot to bear that I will always have this wound. But I think, I feel, and I have seen that we have such an enormous capacity to heal, that we have more of a healing capacity than we would probably ever realize or give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
And I know that I personally have healed from things that I didn't think that I ever would, and have moved through things that I was just like, well, this is just how it is. This is just the way things are. And I guess this is just something I'm going to deal with. And, but then actually doing the work and moving through things and finding that deep inner healing that you realize, no, actually things are different. Things are really different. And I've met so many people who've worked through and healed enormous trauma and physical illnesses and physical injuries and things that you're like, that blow your mind that you could heal from.
Right. I think so in a word, yes. Can we ever fully heal? Yes, but here's, or yes, and I should say,
and
here's this other piece, again, looking at the sort of martyr defeatist attitude of like, well, we're going to carry this karma forever. So like, what's the point? And it's going to take you, I think I even had someone quote me a number at one point where somewhere they had read, it takes 10 lifetimes to heal a thing. And I'm like, that seems really inefficient. Like, I don't know, what do you want me to say? And how arbitrary, where did that come from? But looking at that, that to me is again tied to this sort of one-to-one relationship that we were talking about at the beginning of, and I know I didn't use that term, but speaking about like the very results oriented, this is what healing looks like outcome thing. And so for someone to say, oh, we can't, ever fully heal this thing in this lifetime, and it takes all these lifetimes to release the karma, to me, that's really looking at, this is what it means when you are healed. It means that and I guess that's a good question of like, what does that actually mean? Like, no longer carry the energetic signature of this thing, or have fully cleared the karma for yourself and all your ancestors, or have released this wound for yourself and all of humanity. Like, what are we talking here? This is another question or another layer around that. But if we're looking healing, arrow, moving toward harmonious alignment, or, healing brings us into harmonious alignment, there are so many different harmonious alignments out there. Like, I think this is a really important piece. You, having gone through your healing process, are not going to be the same person that you were before the wound occurred. Mm-hmm. It's not about going back to who you were before. It's about moving through and transmuting to come into your new space of harmony.
Mm-hmm. And discovering, right? The healing process is one of discovery. It's one of learning about yourself and diving into yourself and learning how to love yourself to a deeper level. And, you might sustain an injury that will leave you paralyzed for the rest of your life, and you will never walk again. And that is a truth. That is simply like that you will live this life for the rest of it, you never walk again. And yet that going through the healing process of working through all of the stuff that goes along with that kind of an injury, there is the opportunity for an enormous amount of growth on the soul level, on this deeper level of who you are as a soul, as this individuated experience of a human on the planet, learning about what it means to be a human on this planet, which means illness and injury and heartbreak and all of the things that we get to experience here, which are enormous contributors to soul experience and to this reharmonizing experience of learning how to love ourselves. I mean, all of us are going to die at some point, and most of us are going to have some sort of illness or injury at some point in our life. And you're not doing it wrong if you've got that. It's just a kind of part of the human thing. Like, this is what we do. We come here, we have experiences, and we die. And it's not always going to be, rainbows and puppy dogs and sunshine. It's gonna sometimes suck, and it's gonna sometimes hurt. And it's through those experiences that we get to evolve our consciousness, to grow, and to discover about ourselves these core aspects of evolution, of forgiveness, compassion, and self-love.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's funny you say it's not always rainbows and puppy dogs, and I'm thinking, well, right now it is. I've got my pup right here and my rainbow blanket behind me, and so sometimes it is rainbows and puppy dogs.
Absolutely.
Right. And sometimes it's not. And again, it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong, but the journey of healing, when we kind of take, I think it's really helpful to sort of take some pressure off of like, what are we actually talking about? What is, and it's palliative care, right? For example, I'll actually give the example rather than like start with the term. When at a certain point, for example, with terminal patients, where it's like, okay, well, that's what's happening, and it's pretty much determined that that's what's going to happen. And they're cool with it, and like they've done everything they need to do. Palliative care looks at, well, how can we just help you feel better in your life right now? Like, what can we do to improve your experience? And so the focus in healing then is not on getting rid of the disease. It's on, how can we help you enjoy the rest of your life more in the time that you have left? How can we help you feel better in your body? How can we help you do whatever? And I've heard some really moving stories. I know a lot of people in the medical field. I know, quite a few nurses, for example, and just hearing this one particular person who had a lot of really powerful experiences working with palliative care, working with terminal patients, where like they're good with it, like they've worked it out with their family, but say for example, there's one person who I heard this example of, like, was unable to use the bathroom on his own. And he's like, well, okay, I'm at peace with it. Like, I've said goodbye to my family, but like, God, it really sucks that I need help to go to the bathroom. I would really like to not have to depend on anyone. So like, what can we do to help me have this experience? And so healing for this person looked like, he had some physical therapy for just like strengthening his muscles, and being able to increase his mobility. And then he was able to have that experience of not needing someone to support him in taking care of his body in that way. And for him, that's what healing looked like. So again, that healing like is a huge target. Like, what are we even looking at, or what are we aiming for here? And what type of harmonious alignment are we creating? And just having space for healing occurs in whatever way it is needed. It is pretty much never actually, it is never, I feel very comfortable asserting that it is not ever I want to be who I was before this wound occurred, or before this disease happened, or before I experienced this trauma. That's not going to happen. Your healing is, okay, what is this journey of transmuting this energy and coming into this place of self-love and compassion and greater understanding and empowerment on the other side?
Yeah, I think that's really beautifully said, and so important for us to remember, because I mean, let's face it, we often hit that point when we're like, fuck, I want to go back to who I was before this happened to me, or if this hadn't happened, then, whatever. And a lot of times we can't see the knowledge, the wisdom, the compassion, the strength, the power, the tools that we'll discover through this process that we're going through. And, I think also when we're looking at this concept of healing, it's important to look at like, okay, I have this thing I'm healing. Like, we often have this misconception in a lot of ways. I think this is important to voice, that there is this very idealized whole version of ourselves. And yeah, we are all whole, and this is kind of almost a tangent where a lot of times when you write about or post about healing or being a healer, or this whole thing, like, some people get very triggered by that, because they're like, no, well, we're whole, and if you can just see yourself as whole, then like you're already whole, and everyone is whole. And it's just like, hold up here now. Yes, in the larger context, we are all whole. We are already healed. We are already that. Absolutely true. And I think that kind of takes the focus off of like, what are the lessons that need to be learned here? What am I working through? What do I need to learn about myself? What do I need to forgive? What do I need to have, what's the stuff that I got going on here? And it also sets us up into this sort of misconception that there is this idealized whole version of ourselves that we're going to someday get to, and we can't be who we're supposed to be in the world, share our work, share our voice, share our passion, help other people, have a family, have a relationship, all of these things that we think can only occur after we've achieved this like holy Buddha on a mountain experience of being completely whole and healed of everything that's ever, happened to us in our lifetime. And so I think that sometimes we get in our own way of our life by focusing on the fact that, oh, well, but I haven't healed this thing yet. And I haven't healed this thing yet. No, I haven't healed this thing yet. So I can't do my work, and I can't oh, I'm not ready for a relationship. Oh, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready for that because I'm still working on this. And sometimes we stop ourselves from living by focusing on this. We stop ourselves from contributing where we can contribute, because no matter where you're at in your healing process, there is still contribution for you to have in the world. There's still stuff for you to be able to say, to be able to offer, to be able to contribute to this planet, no matter where you're at in your process.
Yeah, I mean, there's that value piece, right? Of like, oh, I'm not valuable. Nothing I have is valuable until I am XYZ, whatever that might be. And that's some nice little bullshit we tell ourselves about, maybe again coming from that, oh, I feel ashamed because I have this thing that I'm healing or whatever. And so really, I want to leave a couple of pieces of food for thought here. And invitations to integrate this, of asking, well, what is my relationship to the healing process? Like, what do I actually believe about healing itself? And treat that as a journal prompt if you like. Maybe go ahead and make some notes for yourself, or, what are my beliefs? What is my relationship to the healing process? And maybe ask yourself, how do I want to relate to the healing process? If you read the answer and you're like, ooh, that feels a little crunchy. Well, how do I want to relate to the healing process? And what do I have to learn from healing itself? So letting yourself kind of, examine that from a couple of different angles, and know that, oh, I totally lost it. I was going to impart some other practice and I forgot. It'll come back. Yeah.
Okay. So as we're there, maybe in this space, like, can we move on to some tools and little things that are going to help people through this healing thing
Absolutely.
that we got going on?
Right. Healing. Oh, I remember what I wanted to share. Okay. So like one other piece about like, can we ever fully heal? Yes, because not only is it like a huge spectrum of what does that actually mean, but also there is more energy and awareness coming to the earth and coming from the collective consciousness now than at any other point in time that we have in recorded history. So there are tools, there are practices, there are energies, there are downloads that are available to us now that we haven't really had access to. So yes, the process of healing is actually being accelerated, not only in terms of, there's more people talking about it now. So yes, there is that, but also in the measurable frequency of energy on Earth is going up and up and up. And there is physically more capacity for us to heal faster, more thoroughly, with more awareness, and more easily than ever before. So just in terms of like what we can measure in physics, like, yes, we're more capable now than ever, and it's going to get, probably even faster and easier from here as there is more and more energy to work with. That was another piece I wanted to put.
Yeah. And so if you feel like, oh my God, I came in with this thing that it's like my lineage and my ancestry and my past lives and my genetic code and all of these things, like, go, like, switch your thing from, oh, this is going to take me 10 lifetimes to, oh, actually, no, I showed up in this lifetime to clear this now. I'm clearing it in this lifetime. I'm clearing it now. This is happening as I speak. That is what's occurring within my field. Right. And, shifting your mind space around it is a huge thing. The number one aspect of healing, if you want to really heal something, is being willing to heal it.
Yeah. And asking, that's number 2. Like, be willing to heal it and then ask, like, hey, can we heal this thing? And usually you will receive support around that. Like, honestly, if it's coming up in your awareness, it's because you're supposed to heal it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't tell you the number of times for myself and then for clients, for other people, where it's coming up in the lineages, where stuff that has been around, not only in the genetic, physical lineages, but in the soul lineages as well, is coming up for massive healing. And also, just a note, like, let's look at, what's going on sociopolitically right now. Like, there is so much in terms of race relations and social justice. And, again, it's been coming up for decades now, but it's like we go through these punctuated periods where, like the women's rights movements and the Black rights movements of decades ago, and now, and more recently, like LGBTQ movements and all of these societal healings, like, it's getting faster and it's getting more close to the surface because it's bubbling up, because we're ready to do it. Like, it is bubbling, it is going, people are feeling it, not only for ourselves as individuals, but for the collective. Like, this is massive shit we're looking at, and we're stepping up to it. More and more people are saying, yes, I want to heal this thing. I want to show up in integrity. I want to show up for social justice. I want to show up for marginalized communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so in within that is that you're not alone, and that what you're going through has a larger scale implication to all of us healing and evolving. So, thank you for your service, that you would choose to work on what you're working on to support all of humanity in our striving to heal from these deep wounds.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, other tools and techniques, since we've got just a couple minutes left here. I give a couple of journal prompts, exploring the relationship to healing, and kind of feeling into, well, what do I have to learn from this, from the nature of healing itself? Not like what needs to be healed, but how can I relate more consciously and take a more active role in my healing process?
Mm-hmm. And again, that willing to be healed, like, I am willing to look, I'm willing to heal, I am capable of doing it. We talked about asking, and I think that probably one of the deepest healing processes that we have to work with is forgiveness. And it's, forgiveness and self-love, like, those are two of the biggest cornerstones of the healing process that there are. And so as you're working on whatever it is, like, looking for any of the places that there is to forgive anyone else from your life, to forgive yourself, to forgive places, and to forgive experiences. And sometimes it takes a while to work through those things and to really find that place of deep forgiveness, and take some work, and maybe you need to have some conversations with some people, reach out and work with people to be able to go through that process of real forgiveness for yourself. But I think that that's an important piece here.
Mm-hmm. I think looking at sort of readjusting our idea of what does it mean to be healed is another piece. And a lot of these are principles. We're giving some action steps, but we're also giving principles and sort of food for thought. But, we all have this idea of like, oh, well, I will be healed when I have, or when I am XYZ, whatever that is. And I encourage you to look at that and be like, why are you wanting that? Is that what healing actually means? Is that what healing you actually need? Or is that, a should? Is that an ego-based idea of like, oh, well, I will be healed when I have, a perfect relationship with my parents and I lose 20 pounds and have a 6-figure income? Like, that's, is that what your healing actually means and looks like? Or is that what you think you should want? Like, maybe your healing is Like I no longer get upset when I talk to my parents on the phone, and I feel comfortable in my body no matter what shape it's in, and I have money to suit my needs and feel really abundant, even if it's not six figures, you know. So sort of looking at like what are we actually wanting and signing up for that is truly in harmonious alignment. Again, like healing arrow, harmonious alignment as kind of our big takeaway, or one of the big takeaways I want to leave you with today.
Absolutely. I think this is, there's so much importance there, because we can get completely off track, right? Just the same as when we say, oh, I'll be successful when this happens. And then we're like, oh God, I'm got that thing and I'm really not successful. Like, it still doesn't feel good. Mm-hmm. So it's important for us to really sit with what is the deeper layers of truth around our healing and the healing process. I think I mentioned it a couple of times, just to not have any shame around what it is you're going through. A lot of times, especially, you know, there's a lot of practitioners who are on this podcast, and people who are moving into more healing work, coaching work, and stuff like that. And sometimes when stuff comes up for us, or we have something go down, or we have this realization, oh my God, I've never healed this thing, we can, you know, use that as a way to beat the shit out of ourselves and be like, I'm a fraud. Oh, I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I have no right to be doing healing work with other people because, you know, this thing. And I think that this is a huge part of us not shaming the experience that we're having, but being like, okay, so here I am. Let's see what's there. Like, okay, what am I going to do to work on this part? There's always going to be something. There's always going to be something that's going on. Like, there's another layer, another level to your amazingness. So don't deny that you are going to continue to transmute, transform, and become more and more amazing and in harmonious balance over time to a level that you never thought was possible.
Right. And know that harmony is a continually evolving goal, you know, so there are so many keys of harmony here. And as we're becoming different people, there are new ways to be in harmony. So one last piece I want to offer is actually let yourself receive and let yourself acknowledge that it's working. You know, this is one other thing that I don't know, Kat, do you see this in people too, where it's almost like we're afraid to actually let ourselves be healed because
absolutely.
Right. And, you know, I think some of that comes from, we identify so strongly with, well, this is my wound. Like, we identify with the wound. And again, this is like a whole other podcast episode there on like the healer. Are you doing that masterclass?
I'm doing the Wounded Healer masterclass today in half an hour at 2:30.
Awesome. Okay, great. So go watch that afterwards, because this is one of the things where when we identify with our wound, we don't want to heal it anymore, because that's how we're identifying.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes dangerous for us, or, you know, like subconsciously dangerous for us to actually heal the thing, because, well, if I do that, then who am I? You know, we lose our sense of self. Yeah. So
we want it to be really hard. We want it to be super challenging. We want it to, I've also heard from a lot of people, well, this is supposed to take a long time. It's going to take me a long time to heal from this. This is going to be really hard. I'm going to have to work really hard at this. And you're like, well, why not just let it be easy? Why not let it be fast? Why not let it already have happened? Like, you know, we become so identified with this process of healing that needs to be really hard, and I need to work super hard at it, and I need to suffer through it, and I need to, like, all of these things. We think that we might have a huge breakthrough and have this amazing, like, oh my gosh, the weight of the world is lifted off my shoulders. I feel so in alignment. I feel so grounded. I feel so on purpose. I feel really happy. I feel really energized. Holy fuck, what's wrong with me? Oh my gosh, how can I mess this up as quickly as possible to make sure that I stay within this old vibratory pattern, so that I can feel comfortable in the place that I was, even though it was very uncomfortable and I didn't like being there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. We like to prove to ourselves that that it has to be hard, because for most of us that's how we grew up. It's like hard work pays off, or like you have to earn it, or like no pain, no gain, right? So we're like, oh, well, easy. If it's easy, it probably didn't work.
Right.
Easy, there's something wrong.
And a lot of times the work that we're doing, and I'm sure we're going to do an episode sometime this summer on soul retrieval, and sometimes some of the processes and practices that you can go through with someone who's doing healing work with you, or some sort of therapeutic work, it really is that fast. It really can happen so quickly. And, you know, I can catch myself of like, you know, thinking it needs to go further, or I need to do more, or whatever, instead of like, you know, allowing myself, oh, I am complete. Like, just like, okay, I'm complete. So what would my life look like if I was completely complete with this thing? Like, what would that look like? I'm going to do that. I'm going to behave that way. I'm going to engage with whatever this is, this relationship, this wound, this issue in that way. I'm going to be that person, that complete whole version of myself, completely free from this wound now. What does that look like today? Okay, it looks like I eat this way. It looks like I go out to do this exercise. It looks like I call a friend on the phone and engage socially. It looks like, oh, I actually stick to my goddamn budget. You know, like, it looks like me actually being that person that is completely whole and healed and taking those actions.
Absolutely. Well, we left you with a lot of things to think about and actions to take there at the end. So please dive into your integration with grace and with allowing and with self-love and compassion, and not overwhelm, please. Like, let this healing process of your relationship with healing be graceful and easy and fast. Let's intend that for you. If you would like to catch up on any of our other past episodes, they're all up on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. You can follow us on Facebook, Shaman Sister Sessions. You can also visit our website, shamansistersessions.com. And from there, you can reach out to us if you like. We love getting notes. You can sign up for our email list and make sure that you get the weekly video in your inbox every week. We also have some offerings and articles, insights, etc., that only go to our inner circle. So if you're interested in following and staying in tune with us, please do go ahead and join our tribe for weekly emails, fun offers, and resources from us. You can, let's see, next week, Tuesday the 5th, we are taking off. Actually, I know, speaking of our inner circle mail, I just sent one out a few days ago, and I incorrectly announced that we were having an episode next week, but we are not on Tuesday the 5th. We're taking it off for my birthday.
Yay!
Yay! But we will be back on Tuesday the 12th as our regularly scheduled programming. So please join us live then. And in terms of updates, Kat, you got anything?
I have in half an hour the Wounded Healer we're looking at the Wounded Healer archetype and our purpose, path, and confidence. And that you can search that on either my Facebook, my personal Facebook page, or through Eventbrite. If you look up the Wounded Healer, I'm sure it's there. Or my name, probably you could search that, Katherine Bird. And then I have 1 week, less than a week. This week is the last week to join the Healer's Process, my 3-month course for those who are interested in doing deep healing work on themselves and translating that work to others, working on grounding and clearing and working with guides and beings and opening the channel for healing work to move through. It's a really profound course of practices and teachings and so much fun. So if you are interested in that, reach out immediately or go to my website, katherinebird.com. It's there under the classes.
Mm-hmm. And I've got a masterclass coming up on Thursday, June 14th at 3:30 p.m. It's Alchemy for the Modern World. So if you're interested in learning more about what are the modern applications of alchemical practice and philosophy, and how is this super ancient practice relevant to what we're doing today, go ahead and tune in. You can find that on Facebook, Eventbrite. Again, Alchemy for the Modern World on Thursday, June 14th. We will be back on Tuesday the 12th with I forget what topic we're doing that day. Healing the inner child, maybe?
Maybe. It'll be great. It'll be amazing.
Yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks, and again, we're taking next week off for my birthday, so go ahead and give yourself a birthday gift from me, even if it's a hug or a high five and a "you're awesome." Like I totally love giving people gifts on my birthday. So whatever gift you would like to receive, let it be my birthday gift to you. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Michelle. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, and thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned for more. And again, please go ahead and reach out. We love getting notes. If anything in here really resonated with you or landed or anything you want to share, go ahead and shoot us an email, shamansistersessions@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.